Hello my darlings. So the following the following video that I've just filmed was a very powerful and very emotional and lovely, incredible discussion with my mum. But I just wanted to put a little trigger warning out there. We do talk about losing your baby. So if this is something that may upset you or you might feel uneasy about watching, then this may not be the video for you to watch today. We do talk about quite a lot of things that you may find upsetting.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you are well. This is part 2 of my chat with my mother, because we were doing part 1 and we realised we were chatting too much, so we've done it into another part. Yeah, I think we're get straight back into the chat. Spoken about me, and then you went on to have 3 more children.
I did.
Sadly, we lost Charlie. So I've got Sam, who is 28. I'm 29. Sam's 28. Henry is 24. Right. I don't know what we're laughing. And then, yeah, so sadly we lost Charlie. So Charlie
would have been 26. He was born in 1995.
So he's in between
Henry and Sam.
So I guess that's always been why there's a bit of a bigger gap. Talk through how that happened.
It was
if you're comfortable.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I'd had a great pregnancy with you, and a good pregnancy with Sam. We were actually just about to go on a big holiday to America in the October. I had the coil fitted, and shouldn't have got pregnant in the first place.
No.
So when I found out I was pregnant, it was a little bit of a blow, to be fair. But our local RD,
because you weren't.
I wasn't expecting. I hadn't planned for it, and because we were going, which is ironic, isn't it? That I should actually think of a holiday, and it's like, oh, I'm going to have a baby in, and we should be going on holiday, not, because it would have been really right at the sort of term. And you were being bridesmaid. It was 2 friends out in America, and you were being bridesmaid, so it wasn't just a holiday. It was quite a big thing. And my GP basically gave me a bit of a kick up the bum and said, Vicky, you are perfectly healthy. A holiday is a holiday. It's a really minor detail. You've got 2 wonderful children. There's no reason why you shouldn't have this. Because I literally was thinking, I didn't know what to do. I hadn't even worked out whether I wanted a 3rd child. So it was a bit of a panic stations for a while and felt all over the show, but I did quite quickly come to my senses, and yeah, he's right, This is...
It was obviously being able to make a baby is an amazing thing, but I guess not all. It's quite natural to sometimes have that worry, that doubt, that is it the right time. So that's probably was quite a natural thing
when
to
you've
feel.
you're taking a contraception to stop yourself having a baby, and then you get pregnant, that's quite a shock. But
that's quite rare.
It's not common.
No.
So it was quite a shock. So once I, and it didn't take that long in hindsight, but once I'd got my head around it, it was like, I was really excited. We were having our 3rd baby. They couldn't find the coil because they wanted, or normally would want to remove that, but they couldn't, so they decided to leave it be because it could cause an early miscarriage. So pregnancy continued, and it was around 23 weeks, probably just over 23 weeks. So I had quite a bump, and I just remember having some very low down pains, and I remember, I think Nanny had you maybe been at school, and Nanny had Sam, and I had been doing some work at home, and they were bringing Sam back, and when they brought Sam back and you'd come, I sort of mentioned to Nanny that, I said, oh, I've had some low down pains, and actually while they were there, I lost some blood. Nanny thought it was wise to call the hospital, and of course the hospital wanted us to go down, and we went down to the hospital. Not really. So I was about 23, 24 weeks.
Okay.
So we got down to the hospital and they did all the tests, and they could hear the baby's heartbeat. I had actually been to the doctors earlier that day because they thought it could be a urine infection, but they could hear the baby's heartbeat, so they didn't think there was anything to worry about. But you know, these pains persisted, and then I had lost the blood. But when we went down to the hospital in Portsmouth, they carried out all their tests, and they were literally about to send us home, saying everything looks fine, until they suddenly wanted to do an internal and could see my cervix was dilating. So they basically sent your dad home, and they put me on a well, I guess it was a prenatal ward. And I went literally just, you know, in the bed I had the curtains around me all the time, and no one.
Did you choose that?
No, I didn't. But no one had actually explained to me that you could be going into labour. Because I wasn't in labour at that point. My cervix
feel quite
was
alone. Do you feel? Because the thing is, Dad had gone home.
Yeah, I didn't. That wasn't at the foremost of my thoughts.
I guess you weren't.
I didn't really,
expected.
Amy. I didn't really know what was going on, to be honest with you.
Did you have any feeling?
Until I started to get the labour pains quite strongly. And me being me, I still didn't push the panic button or call anyone, because because I didn't expect to go into labour. I was 23, 24 weeks pregnant, and they got worse and worse and worse until I did have to push my button and say I'm you know, in so much pain. And at that point they basically took me to obviously a delivery room, and that was in the early hours of the morning. And obviously they called your dad, and he was on his way down, and I was sort of in full-blown labour, at which point they told me that because of only being 23 or 24 weeks, there was a 50-50 chance that the baby would survive. And which that was hard because labour's hard, but having that in your mind when you know, you don't know whether the baby,
to be told that,
that was really, I remember I only had gas and air, and I actually remember I can actually remember that room. I actually remember the window being to the right and the light coming through that window, and I was on my own until your dad got there. I was on my own, you know, in labour. So of course when Charlie was born, which I believe was about 11 o'clock in the morning, they were going to quickly know whether he was going to survive. And they, you know, it wasn't long before they said to me, although he was born and breathing and living, they said they just felt he was that slightly bit too immature in his growth to survive it. And I guess now, sort of 26 years on, there are things I wish I'd asked or done differently, because my biggest regret is not holding him until the minute he died, because I did hold him and he was alive, and but he was gasping, you know, he was gasping for, you know, maybe
so he wasn't connected up to anything.
No, they dressed him and I was holding him, and I wish I'd have held him right until his last moments, and that's my biggest one regret. And it was honestly, Amy, it is the worst time of my life, because I'd been in hospital having had you and having had Sam, and had that baby, well, not you at night because they put you in a nursery ward, but you have that baby by your bed, and to be in hospital, because I was in hospital for several days while they tried to investigate it, Afterwards, I didn't have that baby, and I had given birth to a baby, and he'd lived, and I'd held him, and it was, I just was totally numb, and I cried a lot. I had this wonderful.
Were you on a ward?
I was in a room. I was in a room.
Yeah.
But I had this wonderful. Well, I don't know. He was a priest. And he came round and sat with me, and they have such a good sense of humour. But the best thing about them is because people would probably be so nervous, and most people afterwards were so nervous of approaching me.
Yeah.
But not because a priest deals with this all the time. He made me laugh. Yeah. He made me laugh in those darkest moments. I can't remember, but I just remember laughing because I was so utterly shattered and numb, but I remember him making me laugh. I also remember the nurse called Jane that was on when I think she was one of the midwives, and she was lovely, and obviously coming away without a baby was horrendous. I remember not being able to speak to anybody.
Going back though, like as in, I understand that the feeling of people around you not knowing what to say, because even me, kind of now, it's like, what do you say to somebody?
You don't really have to say anything. No. That's the thing. And I've learned that. And even now, I know it's the hardest thing. If someone loses someone, I know people are scared, but all you have to, you don't really have to say a lot. You can say, I'm so sorry, and that's enough. You've acknowledged it. And I learned that because one friend, and she didn't mean it, but she didn't acknowledge it. She saw me a few weeks later and she didn't even acknowledge it, probably because she didn't know how to. But that hurt me because I didn't care what she said, and that's the biggest thing to take away from it. It doesn't matter what you say. The person going through the pain will forgive you probably for anything, but to acknowledge it. And but
not like, I guess,
because
like, would it be nice for like somebody to say like, what kind of eyes did he have, and like kind of acknowledge that he was there, because it's not. You're not scared to. Not be scared to.
No. I totally wouldn't have minded any of that. But I couldn't actually speak. I couldn't see anyone for quite some days. Probably, I can't remember how long it was, but because I was so, devastated by it. The hardest thing, Amy, was that we had left in the July. You were at school, and Sam was at nursery. So we had left. I had a bump. And then when I went back in September, I didn't. So people assumed I'd had the baby, and that was really tough because, oh, you've had the baby, that was quite tough. But all I would say is acknowledgement from anyone. If they're gonna, they don't have to think of anything clever to say. No, just acknowledge. Just try and be normal, and just ask. If you want to ask a question, or say anything you want, because
I feel like there is, like, when people have lost like a baby, like a spouse, like anyone, there is this sort of feeling of like not knowing
what to say. You could say that. You could say, I really don't know what to say. And the person would say, that's fine,
What did you say to us? Like, how did you?
I think we told you that he wasn't big enough, he hadn't grown enough, and he was too little to
And how did we?
I can't remember, because you were 6. You were just coming up 6, and Sam would have been barely 4, and so he was quite young, so it wasn't too difficult. I remember you asking a few more questions, but I think you were still quite young. But it is something that I will never, talking about it now upsets me. But after a time, you learn to live with it, but every year on his birthday, I come back to it like a wound that you've scratched, and and I remember everything. I still remember things so clearly, and I get a very big on his birthday, but you know, you just learn and to live with it, and the pain does subside, but you never forget.
No. That was deep. That was deep.
But it's life.
Yeah.
And it's another, you know, experience which has made me probably stronger, because when you have to cope with these things, you know, it toughens you up a little bit.
You're a tough old cookie. Now we have gone on again, but this was something I wanted to speak to you about, because I think it's quite important to talk about.
Definitely.
Loss and losing a baby, just because obviously it's not something I've experienced,
and people see,
and I've actually not ever had this. I've never had this conversation with you in this way, so that was quite nice. And
it doesn't matter, you know, if you lose a baby at 8 weeks, at 16 weeks, at 20 weeks, you know, the grief for whoever's going through it it means the same to them. It's a loss, and it's really tough. It's one of the toughest things I've ever had to go through. But life does go on, and the pain does become easier, but you never forget.
No. And it's always being able to have that open conversation.
And the happy part of the story is when your youngest brother Henry did come along, we went back down to Portsmouth Hospital, that was a little bit, you know, I was going to have a baby in the hospital where I lost Charlie, and Jane was on duty, and because of the name Panther, she recognised it and came up and said, and she was so happy, and she was just so happy to see me.
And
with
the fact
her.
that she'd remembered.
Sort of 2 years old.
Do you know what? I think I'm going to have to call you back for another time, because there's so much I could, like, I want to talk to you about loads of other things, and I will have to get you back another time. I feel like we'll have to record another one another time. But this has been lovely. In like talking, being able to just sit down and talk about it, about these things that I guess we've never really sat down and spoken about.
No.
And obviously there's, Anyway, I feel a bit emotional. But thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you again for another video. And I think this one I have to come on along again, because we've got lots more to talk about.